Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Search. Today I would like to talk about a mystery you can all get involved in. Today we're looking at the mystery behind the secret, a treasure hunt. Byron Preiss was an interesting man. A native of Brooklyn, New York, Preiss was a writer and a teacher who seemed to pour his heart into his work. Preiss wrote and produced many illustrated novels and comics dedicated to anti-drugs and pro-education. Preiss, as a publisher, published many children's books for celebrities as well, and was one of the first publishers to use electronic media forms, now known as e-books. Preiss's dedication to the community and education led him to publish a book of clues to buried treasure, 12 precious jewels, or rather porcelain keys, that would earn the finder the precious jewel that the keys signified. Preiss's main inspiration was a book called Masquerade by Kit Williams. It stirred a treasure-hunting frenzy in England in the late 70s. With the inspiration of Masquerade and the desire to inspire and educate, Preiss began traveling all over North America, burying porcelain casks that held the key to the treasure. Preiss would wear a hard hat, blue jeans, and a polo shirt while burying his cask, making him look official so no one would bother him while he was burying the cask. After burying all 12 casks, Preiss wrote 12 poetic verses with clues to the locations of the treasures. Preiss also sent Polaroid pictures of the area around the burial spots to a man named John Jude Palancar, who painted 12 paintings using the Polaroids to inspire the images. When a verse is matched with a painting, all the clues needed to find one of the 12 casks is present. With the 12 verses and 12 paintings, Preiss created a book published in 1982 called The Secret, a Treasure Hunt. The book has a story of fantasy creatures that travel from their homelands to the New World, inspired by all the immigrations to North America. Each burial location of the treasures are also inspired by immigrations to North America, and Preiss believed the treasures would be found shortly after publication. To this day, however, only 2 casks have been found. The cask for Image 5, verse 12, was found in Chicago in 1983, and the cask for verse 4, Image 4, was found in Cleveland in 2004. Both finds were made with a little help from Preiss himself, as if you wrote Preiss to see if you were close or not, he would help. But sadly, that is no longer possible, as Preiss passed away in a tragic car accident in 2005. The 12 ceramic casks are protected by transparent boxes and are sealed. Each treasure cask is buried at a depth of 3 to 3.5 feet in their various locations, each hidden somewhere in North America. The jewels collectively are worth over $10,000, and the casks themselves could be worth even more to collectors, as they have never been owned and are one-of-a-kind works of art and now American history. Each cask contains a porcelain key that can be traded for a precious stone. The stones themselves were originally kept in a safety deposit box in a bank in New York. Byron Preiss did put a few rules in his book to help narrow down the search. He stated the following places do not hold any treasure. That's any life-threatening location, such as a dangerous highway, embankment, a contaminated area, or active railway track. No cemetery will hold any treasure, any public or private flower bed, and any property owned by the contributors to the book, their families, or their friends. For a good example of how Byron Preiss's rules to the game really work, we'll take a look at the painting and verse for a cask hidden on Roanoke Island, North Carolina. So the verse starts off with past 2 friends of Octave. Frank and Wilbur Wright were friends with Octave Chanute, and he helped finance some of their flight experiments. The Wright Brothers National Memorial is on the Outer Banks of North Carolina near Kitty Hawk and Kill Devil Hills. The next line states, in December. That would be in reference to the first flight the Wright brothers made in December, and some people think maybe it has something to do with Highway 12 running along the side of the Outer Banks right next to the memorial. Ride the Man of Oz would refer to L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz. The Washington Baum Bridge connects the Outer Banks to the east side of Roanoke Island. The current bridge that stands there was actually built in 1994, but there was an earlier bridge in the same place, and it was built in 1928 and would have been there when Priest was hiding his gems. To the land near the window. The land near the window is probably a reference to the outline of Roanoke Island that appears near the window in image 3. There is a road that leads to dark forest. After crossing the Washington Bomb Bridge, U.S. Highway 64 runs through Manteo and goes to the Fort Raleigh National Historic Site at the northern tip of Roanoke Island. Where white is in color with two maps may be a reference to John White. He was an English artist and colonist who was the governor of the colony of Roanoke Island. He actually painted in watercolor, and there is a sign across from the ticket booth at the entrance to the Waterside Theater which shows two maps. One is a watercolor map by John White, and the other is a modern map of the Fort Raleigh National Historic Site. After circle and square may refer to the shapes of two garden beds in the Elizabethan Gardens, as shown in the Elizabethan Gardens map. The centerpiece of the area is a large square bed called the Sunken Garden, and there are several circular areas around it. In July and August may refer to the top line on the Virginia Dare Memorial, which begins on this site in July through August 1585. A path beckons to mica and driftwood. The mention of mica is probably just a general hint to steer searchers to the correct site, but the mention of driftwood tells us that we should follow a path north to the coastal edge of the property where stray logs and branches wash up on the beach. Under that which may be last touched or first seen standing. Last touched or first seen is almost certainly a reference to a tall tree. When the colonists sailed to Roanoke Island in July of 1587, the first indication of land they would have seen would have been the top of a tree. And the last thing they would have touched would have been a tree where they peeled the bark off of tree trunks on two trees and carved the letters Croatoan into the trunk of one and CRO into the trunk of another. Look north at the wing and dig to achieve by dauntless and inconquerable determination your goal. These instructions would strongly suggest that from the actual dig site you would be able to look northwards across the water and see the Wright Brothers National Memorial at Kill Devil Hills. At the base of the tower of the memorial there is a phrase that states, "In commemoration of the conquest of the air by the brothers Wilbur and Orville Wright, conceived by genius, achieved by dauntless resolution and unconquerable faith." Some people believe that the clues in verse 11 and painting 3 actually lead you to the Elizabethan Gardens or the Waterside Theater as the point where the treasure will be buried. But I personally believe that if you take the Thomas Harriot Loop Trail out to where it bends, there's another trail that leads down to the Albemarle Sound. And you can see across the sound and see the Wright Brothers Memorial from that area. And if you look north right there and get on the north side of the trees right before the sand starts at the beach, I believe if you start digging right there, you'll probably find the treasure. You do want to get permission from park officials before you dig. I know back in the 80s, Byron just went in with a disguise and dug a hole and buried it. And you could try that, but you might end up spending a night in jail doing that, so you may want to get permissions first. But what the hey, if you don't and you still find it and you get out of there, good on you. But if you do find it, and you find it by watching this video and taking my clues on it, please leave a comment or send us a message to let us know you found it. Two of the 12 casks have been found, but there are still 10 out there to find for any of you that have that treasure hunting, Indiana Jones, pirate-to-be nature about you. To get you started, here are all 12 verses with their matching paintings. If you see one close to you or one that you are interested in hunting, just pause the video to study the verse and the painted image. guys, thank you very much for joining us for another episode of The Search. Hopefully this is something you haven't heard of that maybe piques your interest and gets you out there treasure hunting. I do want to say, if you find any of these jewels at all and you found out about the book watching this video, please leave a comment or send me a message to let me know. Because really, if you find any of these jewels, you're a part of Americana, you're a part of American history at that point, because this mystery is over 30 years old. So guys, subscribe if you like the video, hit the like button as well, and we will see you next time.